Good afternoon. How is everyone doing? Good, I'm glad to hear it. You know, afternoon sessions, we always need to bring the energy up a little. So I'm Sabina Devan. I'm the president and executive director of a research institution called the Just Jobs Network. And at the Just Jobs Network, our goal is to find evidence-based solutions to one of the most pressing challenges of our time, which is how do you create more and better jobs in this world that's constantly changing. So we conduct research to inform policy making and governance of labor markets. So the title of this session is Making Work Work, Returning Value to the Creators of Value. Let me contextualize that a little bit. So in the line of work that I do, one thing that's really apparent, and maybe some of the youth in the audience will concur, that there is a real crisis in the world of work today. When we look around us, we see technology, we see climate change, we see the energy transition, we see pandemics, we see the restructuring of trade into value chains. All of these really big forces are changing the way that you and I live and work. And this is all happening faster than the ability of policies, of regulations, of governments to keep up with this change, right? In this context, we see all around us, I mean, particularly in a country like India, you just walk out of the gates of the Leela Palace and you'll see tremendous amounts of inequality that exist, right? We live in a world where economic systems today are geared so that money begets money. You have money, you can invest it, you can make more money. Power begets power. Privilege begets privilege, right? And if we put that in the context of India, let me give you some statistics. Approximately 360 million young people are between the ages of 15 and 29 in India. And they are all struggling to find jobs. Now that number is higher than the entire population of United States or any other industrialized country in the world, right? And if you look at the labor market statistics, only 1/3 of women actually participate in the labor market. Only 45% of the population participates in the labor market. Over 90% of India's employment is informal employment, marked by poor working conditions. And what do I mean by poor working conditions? That is what this panel is going to address. It's the issue that a lot of the value that creators, that the producers, the people actually doing the work, the value that they generate doesn't actually accrue to them. There are a lot of middle people, whether we're talking about platforms as intermediaries or labor contractors, a lot of these middlemen take that value and it doesn't accrue to the workers. And so here today, the idea is against this backdrop of a labor market crisis with the value not accruing to the people that are actually doing the work, that are doing the production, we're looking at blockchain as a potential solution to some of these challenges. Blockchain is not just a public ledger, as you'll see, but applications of blockchain can actually be used to help return value to the creators. So this is why I'm really excited for the panel today, because we have panelists that are exploring innovative applications of blockchain to solve real-world problems and ensure that more of the value accrues to the creators. So this panel will really sort of hopefully ground to you what blockchain can do and what its real-world utility is. So without further ado, I'm really excited to introduce our panelists. We have here Suraj Teja, who's the founder and CEO of Sow and Reap. We have Syed Mohsin Raza, who's the founder of Birana Handmade. And we have Angad Sodhi, who's the founder of Colors of India. And of course, everyone here probably already knows our esteemed panelist, Anil Kakani, who's the VP and India country head of Algorand Foundation. So let me start with you, Suraj. You're sitting in the middle. Let me start with you. Could you just take 2 minutes really quickly and tell us about Sow and Reap? What is it?
Sow and Reap is an agro private limited company which primarily works on follow credits Basically, what we do is we are a carbon credit offsetting projects company, which generates carbon credits on agroforestry-based projects. So that is the primary functionality of Sow and Reap, under which we have selected a farmer program, which we named as Project Worry. Worry signifies paddy crop. So the project is about better water management, which reduces methane emissions into atmosphere, which tackles global warming.
And how many farmers do you work with?
We have roughly onboarded 50,000 farmers for this year. And collectively, we have reduced 4 lakh tons of carbon emissions for this year.
Great. Look forward to hearing more. Thank you.
Sure, thanks.
Mohsin, can you tell us about Birana Handmade?
Sure, I can. But before that, I would like to ask the audience one question. Have you got your gamusas?
Yes.
The one probably you're wearing, one probably you already have in your bags. So that's the Assamese gamusa. So this is very intrinsic, something very emotional to me, because this is a part of the culture of bigger Assamese society. And once you wear it, you become that, part of that society. So thanks to all of those who are wearing. Now, while talking about this culture and tradition, I must say one thing, that the community back there in my place is facing a kind of crisis. And this crisis is because of the counterfeit gamusas coming outside Assam, which do not even have the GI tag. I must mention one more thing. Despite having the GI tag, and there are so many authorities, local authorities, to stop those gamusas, like counterfeit gamusas, but still they're running in a big margin. And if I talk about the margin and the market, it's like annually, only in Assam, there is a requirement of 13 tons of Assamese gamusa. Because whatever the situation is, whichever the occasion is, whichever the puja or festive season is there, gamusa is always there. Even to honor people, we use gamusa. But this 13 tons of requirement is not filled by the weavers we are working with, because they are working in the looms, which are totally green, and they can barely produce 3 gamusas just in, say, a week. So because of this kind of situations, because of those counterfeit gamusas, we needed something that could establish the traceability part, so that authenticity can be tracked back, even in the entire journey. So that's where Birana Handmade came in.
We'll come back. I want to hold the thrust of this conversation to the next round, and that's where we'll bring blockchain. Perfect. Thank you. Angad, how about you? Can you tell us a little bit about Colors of India?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, am I audible? I'm not.
No?
I had a feeling this was me. Is it?
The hand mic isn't. Yeah, maybe.
Hi. Oh, so much better.
Perfect.
So Colors of India is essentially an organization that was started by a group of Indian artists who were early adopters in the NFT space. And the idea behind the organization is to increase representation and to actually help other artists leverage Web3 technology and other sort of new tech that is sort of adjacent to the blockchain. And over the sort of course of 3 years, we've actually been working on a 2-pronged mission. One is to actually help sort of onboard, educate, and empower artists who are already familiar with the blockchain. And the second is to sort of bridge Web 2 and Web 3, and thus create more opportunities for artists to actually gainfully earn money from what they do. Because art till now has been looked at very often in the Indian context as either a hobby or an afterthought. And that's something that we're looking to tackle through Colors of India.
Great. Thank you. So, Anil, I wanted to now turn to you, and I'm curious, and I'm sure our audience is too, why is Algorand interested in making work and the issue of the world of work? Please make the connection for us between blockchain and better outcomes for workers, and then we'll have the rest of the panelists come back and ground that for us.
Great. Thank you, Sabina, for moderating this panel, and thank you all for being here this late in the day. This topic is really deep. Sabina and I have worked together for a while. Back when you think about people that live kind of on the edge of the formal economy and whose ties to the labor force are tenuous, and the way I remember it when I worked on these issues more closely, the tenuousness of that connection was usually a result of lack of access to healthcare or childcare or domestic issues addiction, that's often why people entered and left the workforce, and they tried to come back. And for a lot of, obviously, blockchain's not the solution for many of those challenges, as we're talking about them today. If you think about what's happened over the last couple decades, Web 2 platforms like Amazon, like Uber, like these secondary ticket sale platforms, like Airbnb even, right? They provided an opportunity for people to monetize their asset, right? If you had a car, if you had a home. But what happened over time is that those platforms became owners of our identity, right? So we thought that they were giving me a way to earn a livelihood, but in fact, what they took away were so when you're Gamsa handloom weavers, they had to begin to sell on Flipkart. And so they lost their identity and they had to compete with product that was coming from machines, right? Suraj, your farmers, right, they could never in that world earn a carbon credit, right? There's no connection between them. So there's an intermediary that took away all that value, right? And Angad, same with you for artists, right? Like all of a sudden I put my product on a platform that gave me access to the market, but in fact that platform took away my identity and they owned me effectively, right? And so that's the connection. How do we bring that value back to the populations that you serve? That's where blockchain comes in to authenticate and create a platform where I can tell you who I am. You don't have to know me, right? It's trustless, it's borderless, but it enables me to authenticate the product that I'm bringing to the market. And for you, no matter where you're sitting, in phase 0 to buy my product, at a later stage to actually finance my operations. Because I know you produce, you have a track record, I can see it on a platform, I'll fund you, right? And we heard earlier today from Chetna Sinha from Mandeshi, right? Those women, if I'm sitting in America and I want to put my money in a bank account, I'd lend to one of those women. I got a 97+% repayment rate. Why can't I lend to her, right? And that's where we hopefully will end up at, and that's what blockchain, that's the connection that I see.
Yeah, thanks for that, Anil. I mean, you kind of started by laying out a number of problems with the labor market and saying, well, blockchain's not going to solve all of them. That's certainly true, but nothing will, right? There's no one solution, and here in these applications that we'll just hear, we have a potential solution that can address a very large part of what is the problem. So with that, let's keep the conversation going. And Angad, let me come to you. Can you make the connection go a little bit deeper for us? I mean, Anil just also reiterated what you said, which is, it's not just about giving artists the access and wider access to markets, but it's also about establishing their own identity and their own agency over their own art. And how does blockchain help do that? Can you make that connection?
Absolutely. So as Anil was saying, especially with the context to say something like social media, with Web 2, we kind of all became creators, but we weren't owners. So what the blockchain allows you to do is to actually take back ownership from the platforms. At the moment, Facebook, Instagram, Meta pretty much owns most of the creative content out in the world. With NFTs or with whatever you want to call them, digital collectibles or just tokens that exist on the blockchain, you as the creator will always own them. And that is one of the biggest game changers. The second being, again, going back to the trustless system, you're getting rid of, again, I mean, it's the thing just told slightly differently. You're getting rid of the middleman, which again, with what Mohsin was saying as well, is something that was happening with the Gamusas has been happening with everything else. In the art world, which is where most of the people I work with come from, majority of your money is actually made by auction houses on secondary sales. Artists have never, I mean, if someone was to sell something today when they were an upcoming artist, by the time their art is actually valuable, they make nothing. It's the secondary sale or the sort of, tertiary sales after that actually make all of the money. So the other thing that the blockchain lets you do is bring in royalty into the equation. So not only do you know where it came from and, the provenance and the history of all of it, you also get, or a creator can also start to get revenue even 50 years down the line or 100 years down the line or however long, that piece of art exists. So those are two things that I feel are very powerful that the blockchain brings in. And the third aspect that I'd really like to address is provenance. Especially for us, I'm going to go just with what I know best. With us as Indian artists in the global scenario, we're a very, very minuscule percentage of what the world art market is, what the global art market is. But we have this immense history of gharanas and sort of schools of art that no one knows of. And because no one knows of them, we don't have provenance. We talk about the Dutch masters or the Italian masters or whatever. There isn't so much context globally for Indian masters or for, say, Kishangarh miniature art. The blockchain allows us to establish that provenance. The more art we have out in the world, the easier it becomes for future artists who are coming in. Because once you know a place is known, like GI tagging, once you know a place is known for something, it becomes valuable.
Yeah.
We can help create value. So, there's a lot to unpack when it comes to the blockchain.
Great, thank you. Suraj, so if I understood correctly, Sow and Reap is basically focused on enabling farmers to engage in regenerative agriculture and is a way of, it helps them monetize their regenerative agriculture for carbon credits and monetize the carbon credits, right? How does blockchain come into the picture here? Can you hand him the
I have the
microphone?
mic.
Oh, your mic, sorry about that.
So, though the idea of generating carbon credits with the help of farmers sounds very fascinating, and it is very, very touching to the heart that reaching out to the farmers where the end stakeholders are the farmers who would be benefiting with the incentives of monetizing the carbon credits. There's a huge challenge when you try to implement these kind of projects because the volume it has to be done. Geographically, in Telangana, we are working out in 7 different districts. And in this, because the area is so vast and the number of farmers, the KYC and the documentation and the integrity of the entire project is at question. So most of the projects doesn't get listed on the grounds of the integrity of the project. So I believed if I am going to do this project, I have to use technology, innovative solutions, where we have digitized the entire measuring, reporting, and verification of the project from the inception, from onboarding the farmers, reaching out to the farmers, and conducting stakeholder meetings, sensitization meetings, making them understand what carbon credit is, and how this is going to improvise their livelihood. It is not only the incentive factor, what they would be getting in the form of money. The major incentive is the soil regeneration, resource saving like water, because this predominantly works on 40% saving of water in this mechanism. All these are the indirect benefits what the farmer is thriving today because of the degeneration of the soil which happened of the current practices. So we go and tell them when we reach out to them, there was a slow adoption, but eventually the trust factor we could gain with the farmers using blockchain, because when I collect their data, which is mandatory for onboarding these projects, farmer wouldn't trust us. Why should I give my KYC to you? Who are you? How can we give you the land documents? How can we give you the bank details? Because all these things, when we explain them, the digital reporting, measurement, and verification, when we collect this data, we would mask the entire data and secure the data secrecy. This could happen when we take the entire data on blockchain. So that is a trust which eventually we educate the farmers on field, and that helped us to gain more and more momentum in onboarding the project.
That's really interesting. One of the things that's really apparent to me, even from the first two, and we're going to hear from Mohsin in a second, is the fact that in India, and I imagine other developing countries as well, that technology we're kind of we need assisted technology, right? That there's a human interface to technological solutions. And I think that's really important because blockchain is a tool that's available. But because we're also working with populations like artists and farmers and artisans that may not know about this technology or how to use it, there is a human interface. And so whenever we're talking about these kinds of solutions in a development context, I think it's important to think about technology-assisted solutions, and this is one of them. Mohsin, same question to you. Please now go a little bit deeper for us in the connection between the Gamosa, makers and the artisans that you work with, and why authenticity through blockchain is so important.
Well, to portray the context, I would say that I would like to thank Algorand, Algorand, and because of them, they procured around 45 kgs of gamusa from us. That is just a marginal fraction of 13 tons of gamusa I'm talking about. And you can just imagine the requirement, the huge requirement, and because of that, the counterfeit, more than 70 to 75% of the counterfeit gamusas are coming into Assam. And to counter those things, we had to have some solution that can, provide us the platform to come up with a solution, like put forward the authenticity part associated with the gamosa, because this is hard work. If you go to a gamosa, if you look at the patterns, they are so intrinsic, and the time taken to create one of the gamosa is really something like, blood and sweat. So because of that, we found that blockchain is the only platform that can help us grow, that can help us establish the authenticity that is required for the gamusa to sustain. Not just sustain from the sustainability point of view, but from the economical point of view as well. Because this market is dying. The art is dying. The people who are waving this thing are flocking away from this art form. And because of that, we needed something which could establish the connection and, make this art live longer. And that's where blockchain comes in.
And how many artisans do you work with?
We have been working since 2011. And in 2018, we incorporated Web 2. So for the Web 2 part, we have more than 2,000 artisans who are working with us. But for the newest one, the blockchain and Web 3, it's more than 200 people we have with us.
That's amazing. And I think all of these are sort of examples that potentially, once we get more data and more information and in time, can be scaled, not just within the communities that you work with, but potentially other applications as well. So all kinds of other artisans. So we're all very keen to see how this story plays out. So I'm going to do something a little unconventional. I don't think this has been done in any of the Algorand sessions so far. But rather than take the questions at the end, I want to make sure that you all aren't sleeping after lunch. So I'm going to open it up for questions or comments. We'll take a few thoughts from the audience. Would anyone like to come in at this stage? Yes, sir. Can we get a microphone, please? Please do introduce yourself, and if you could keep it a little bit short.
Thank you. My name is Ramiro Almeida. I have a question for Suraj. Sow and reap. I'm very interested in the artisan work, and I just want to have a better understanding on how is the blockchain being integrated with the physical component of the handcraft itself, and how would you prevent for counterfeiting of such element? I kind of want to understand better of the mechanics and the specifics of what are you using to integrate the identity itself to the physical component of that handcraft.
I think it's more for you.
Yeah.
I guess that's a question for me.
Yeah.
The handmade, the art form you have in your hand, the gamosa.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Like, if I talk about this part, like how it comes in, well, this is something really I was looking forward to, like Suraj, that he will answer this. Like, so,
No, it's for you.
yeah.
It's for you.
So, intriguing all these things require a lot of tacting, and to be very honest and frank, I have my tag team who expertise in all these things. So if you want a longer answer for this, a deeper answer for this, I would request you to meet me after this session so that I can, talk with you and I can learn from you as well, because you were in the previous one of the panels. So yeah, I look forward to learning from you as well.
Yeah.
But
Let's-
just on
Yeah.
that, right? So just because we've been involved in working at Algorand with the Barina team, so it's the QR code. So if you look at the shawl that was given out, on the back of the tag is a QR code, right? That QR code, if you scan it, it takes you to an NFT. The NFT has the story of the woman who made who actually made what village she's from, how many days it took her to make the gumsha. So that's the original authentication. So that's all that's right now built in.
Well, I guess my question had to do with the fact that if you take the tag out, then there's no digital identity anymore because there's no QR code.
If you take the tag.
Exactly. And that action is very simple to do. If somebody would like to counterfeit that specific handcraft, all that would have to do is to cut the tag, correct?
Okay. So I'm going to let you say that, and then we can come back to this. I want to take a few other comments.
So there are actually tags that you can embed into the fabric, which will also trigger an alarm if somebody cuts them off, which will also geolocate where they are. So while this particular garment right now does have the problem you've said, there are ways around this. Technologically, there are very small chips that can be embedded, which, if they're removed, will trigger an alarm. So essentially, you'll know if something went wrong, that's when it went wrong, and that will also be documented on the blockchain. So that is possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I think, the idea is also to kind of first understand the application that blockchain could potentially have in these different scenarios, in returning value back to the creators, in solving some of these labor market challenges. And then I think as we move forward to, leveraging the technology in more and more sophisticated ways. So we start with a tag, but then we end up embedding it into the fabric later on. And I think that is the kind of iterative process that's going to happen as we sort of deepen the use of technology in these applications. I think we're in the starting phases, but thank you for that question. I think it's an important one. Let's take a couple more quickly. I'll take two together and then we'll go to the panel. I did see a few more hands up. Does anyone? Yes, please. Sorry, just 1 second. We'll get you a mic. And if you could also introduce yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Tanvi. I live in Zurich and I work for UBS. So it's really impactful to see some very impactful use cases here at the summit. My question would be more in line of getting rid of the intermediaries in the process, because that seems to be the most pressing challenge when the value really needs to go to the people that are creating the value and not the intermediaries. So how in the spaces that you are engaged in, whether it's Colors of India, Birana, getting rid of the intermediaries, and how you are marketing the product from an art form and not just a cloth form over to more interested audiences that would love to buy directly from the weavers.
Do you want to
Great.
go first?
Just a second. Let me take a couple more, and then you can answer all together. How about that? Yeah? Is that okay? I think that'll be more time efficient. Other comments, questions? There were a few more hands up earlier. Did you guys change your mind? We were so brilliant. We answered all of your questions already. Going once? Anyone? No? Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Angad.
Hasan, you want to
Or Mohsin,
go first?
who would like to go first?
You can talk directly about your use case. Sure. So coming to just what Colors of India does, we work with artists, and any transactions that artists have are done directly with the consumer. So essentially what the blockchain is designed to do is for people to transact directly with the creator, and any subsequent royalties or anything else go right to them as well. So as an organization, we're not an intermediary, we're not a middle person or whatever. But I think you also asked about how you can promote. Sorry, could you repeat that part of the question again, if that's? Which is something that just by its very nature, the blockchain is a global marketplace. When it comes to actually promoting individual artists, or when it comes to sort of individual artists promoting themselves, that's where organizations like ours actually come in, where we are trying to establish, like I was saying in my first answer, we're trying to establish a certain amount of provenance for Indian art. Essentially, the art world, a lot of value in the art world is created from perception and from history and from storytelling, which even in a much broader way, we as a country have sort of failed to do. We've become a sort of service provider to the world. We've become, you know, a back end for a lot of things happening in the world. But telling good stories and building strong narratives that actually create value, that is something that the blockchain actually allows you to do, because if you can tell where something has come from, you can tell why it's important. If you can sort of track the chain of custody, you can build a far more compelling argument for why that thing is valuable. And that is where we come in. We're actually talking to and working with a lot of Web2 organizations, again, to also create opportunities. For instance, last year we had about 20 Indian artists who were featured on billboards in Times Square as part of NFT NYC. There's, you know, at any given point, there are artists who are working with major, so a few weeks ago we did a campaign with Coca-Cola, and a couple of dozen artists were featured on billboards across the country and were sort of actually paid for some of the work that they'd done, which is what our motive is. It is to support living artists and, you know, not wait for them to die before they actually can make a living off of what they do. I'm not sure if that directly addressed your question.
Wasim, did you want to come in on this and add as well?
Well, for Birina, we started with Web3 very recently. So all our marketing channels are totally based out of Web2 so far, but we are transitioning, and we are relying more on the, the contemporary kind of thing, whatever we have. So yeah, I would second Angad and say that yes, we are looking forward to so many things ahead of us.
I think it's really important to also, this idea of the stories. I mean, when we're talking about climate change and changing consumer behavior and sustainability, in many markets, this is also consumer driven, right? Consumers want fair trade. They want to know, they want organic. And I think what you were saying, Angad, blockchain enabling the connection of the consumer to those stories, I think could make a big difference in, you know, furthering that movement toward, you know, more sustainable, greener, authentic support of artists, artisans. Let me ask you, Suraj, I want to bring you back into this conversation and tell us a little bit more about, so we understand the basics, but what's next? Where are you in this process of utilizing blockchain to help farmers monetize their carbon credits, and what's next for you in that?
We have the carbon market works in the paddy when we complete 2 seasons, 2 cycles of cropping. So the first cycle of cropping is done, and we are waiting for the second cycle of cropping. Once this 2 cycles of cropping is done, then the validation and the verification part would happen. But in our case, because it is the first project coming from India in gold standard, which got registered, and because of the DMRV, which I told initially, the validation part has been already done. Basically, without having a technology in place, there is too much of validation time which takes 6 to 8 months post the crop cycle is done. Because of the introduction of digital MRV, there is enough data for the validators to come ahead of time to do the entire process of validation, taking the geolocations, because we have done the geomapping of the entire 50,000 hectares, and we have geotagged, geofenced, geotagged, and all the cycles of alternate wetting and draining cycles, what we do in the field, has been documented. And this gave an edge for the validators to finish off the validation period in 45 days. So this way, by the time the next cycle is conducted, we are expecting the carbon credits would issue in a month's time. So that would benefit the farmers to get incentivized faster, and that would enable me to do more farmers for the next season.
Yeah. I also want to just ask you a question for the sake of our audience, because to understand what it actually means to be able to go through that validation process in 45 days, what is the average size of a farm holding of farmers that you deal with?
So basically, Indian farmers, unlike the Western farmers, aren't very rich. They're economically backward farmers. They all hold, when I say 50,000 hectares, it contributes to 50,000 farmers, each farmer owning 1 hectare of land, which is 2.5.
Exactly. So the idea that you're taking what is essentially a very disaggregated, farmer base, and then applying this technological solution to get through this verification process in such a short period of time is no small feat, right? We're not talking about 1 or 2 farms with that amount. We're talking about 50,000. I think that's a really important point, especially in a country like India that's so heterogeneous and so large, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Was there anything else you wanted to add?
So the blockchain part, which you said, so the whole story before blockchain is like when the data comes on at the different stages of the product being developed, the project being developed, we push the data to secure the data onto the on-chain, on blockchain. So the executives who would be visiting fields multiple times to feed second set of data, we don't want them to access, to have crucial data access for these executives. One, that way blockchain helps in prior the project. And the second, where I would see the blockchain comes into play is taking this, being finance heavy projects like these would need funding for these projects, where I would want to expose this project on Web3 platform, where there would be investors on the other hand who would be interested in projects like these, like agroforestry projects. Because if you see, the carbon market is very volatile today. It is very, very fluctuating. The dollar value for the carbon credit, if you see for the renewable energies, is less than $2. Only projects on SSB are holding value, which is social and climate-centric projects. We believe that if we have technology integrity, if we by putting blockchain on this project, where the integrity of the entire project can be established to the investors, it is safer for them to come forward and fund these kind of projects where the data integrity is solid.
Makes sense. Thank you, Suraj. So, I'm looking at the time, Anil, and we're almost out of time. And I'd like to come back to you and say, this has been a really interesting discussion. We're actually really just scratching the surface of what the potential can be and the technical aspects and also the wider application. But what are the key messages that you would like all of us to leave today, leave this conversation with, in terms of the potential value of blockchain to improve outcomes for workers and for society and economies as a whole?
Well, I think we look at it from both the side of the creator of value, and you also mentioned from the consumer's perspective, right? The consumer increasingly wants information about where that product came from, whether it's wanting to know whether there was child labor involved or whether there was pesticide used, right? All that for scope 1, scope 3, scope 2, scope 3 with ESG reporting. I mean, the value and the power of blockchain, both to protect the integrity and the rights, provenance, right? The whole concept of provenance, which is really understanding the source. Where did this thing come from? And that's what blockchain gives us. It gives, it while retaining privacy, provides transparency. And I think what I've spent time both, Anga not as much, but I've been to the farms where Suraj works. I've been to the handloom, the homes and where those gum shawls were made. And of course, we don't all get to go and see where the carbon credit's being earned or where that fabric is being woven. But increasingly, we want to know, right? We want to know, and as consumers, we care. When doing this event here today, right, we were very adamant. You might have noticed there's no red meat on the menu. Why is that? Because we want to be as sustainable as we can. These glasses are glass, they're not plastic. We as consumers are more involved in what we consume. We get to make more decisions and we have more options. So I personally think, you know, one of the real powers of blockchain is that it's a true platform that enables us to exercise that choice. And again, the other perspective that they bring is, is more from the perspective of the work, and that's where, you've seen in the work that you do, there's been a huge amount of migration that's happened for people that have to chase jobs, right? Have to go, we had a company earlier today, Echo, right? What does Echo do? They historically have been a solution for migrant laborers to send money back to their villages. Well, why do they have to send money back to their villages? Because they had to leave their family. Why? Because that's where the jobs were, right? So if blockchain can empower these people to stay where they actually prefer to stay, with their families, with their homes, it's not that you want to force anyone to, but if you have that option, that's pretty powerful. So that's where I would love to see blockchain achieve its full potential.
Great, thank you, Anil. I think I don't come at this, I'm not a technology expert, although I look a lot at how technology affects the world of work. And if there's one thing I know about the current crisis that we're in with respect to jobs, it's that there is no one-size-fits-all solution, and there is no one solution. And in that vein, blockchain is certainly not a panacea. But I know that I, as skeptical as I can be about things sometimes, am convinced after hearing these stories that if we do this in a thoughtful, deliberate way, if we actually look at how some of these solutions can be applied in a human-assisted kind of way, how blockchain can be applied to artisans and farmers and artists, I think it's a very, very powerful tool that we have to return value to the creators and to create a slightly better world of work in these very tumultuous times. So with that, I want to thank Algorand for having me up here. It's been a great learning journey for me in preparation for this, to learn about the excellent work that our panelists are all doing. And of course, Anil, for taking on this incredibly interesting, cutting edge, and meaningful project. So thank you all for participating.
Thank you.